Hey everybody, this is Dave again. Welcome back to Just the Watch. Today I've got the new version of the Spinnaker Dumas to take a look at, and I really like it, but I've also got kind of some mixed feelings about it. Let me tell you what I mean. So this is very likely the best dive watch Spinnaker has ever made. Everything about it, from the design to the construction to the specifications, even down to the price, makes it a pretty incredible dive watch, I think, especially for the money that you're getting. And this was meant to be the bracelet that takes that dive watch up to the next level. It's an amazingly high quality stainless steel bracelet, but the design of it has a couple of issues that make it really tough for me to actually use. Let's go ahead and get into the review. Spinnaker Dumas is one of Spinnaker's vintage-inspired watches, which they make a lot of. It's some of their most popular watches, and they tend to be really cool, interesting watches with great vintage looks, and this one's no different. In this case, they're going back to the 1970s to kind of pull this somewhat funky design with this eight-sided case shape and really bright, bold colors, and it looks great. It's a really fun-looking watch. But what really sets this apart from some of Spinnaker's other vintage-style watches is that this one really has the specs to make it like a professional level dive watch. So Spinnaker, a lot of people have trouble with Spinnaker's vintage watches in that many of them have less than 200 meters of water resistance. They often come on a leather strap, and the lume's not always that great. And these are things that really make them not suitable for serious diving. They're great watches for everyday use. They're great for taking to the beach and occasionally getting wet. But they're not the kind of thing that you'd use for professional diving activity. And some people, they want more out of a dive watch than that. And so I think it's cool that Spinnaker now is giving you a choice in that, because the Dumas has all of the specs that you would expect out of a professional grade dive watch. This is the second version of the Dumas, and the main upgrade in this one, the main change in this one, is in addition to giving you a couple of other dial colors, they've moved from a rubber strap to a really high quality stainless steel mesh, which has a lot to like about it, but it also has some design issues that make it really hard for me to consider using it long term. So I definitely have some mixed feelings about the bracelet. I could almost do a complete review on just the bracelet. But I'll go ahead and break this up. I'll talk about the watch first, and then the bracelet, the good and the bad. And hopefully that'll help you guys if you're considering purchasing this watch. Starting with the specifications on the watch, you're getting a 43 millimeters across, 48 millimeters lug to lug, 22 millimeter lug openings, 15 millimeter height, 300 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, fully loomed hands, hour markers, and bezel. And the bezel is 120 click unidirectional bezel. And inside you're getting a Seiko NH35 movement. Price on this is starting at $400 retail, but I have a 15% off coupon down below, which if you are interested in purchasing it, you can use that to knock it down to, I think, around $340 with the coupon. Just full disclosure, that if you use that code, it will give me a small commission on anything you purchase on the Spinnaker website. That code is good site-wide. Also, to note, this watch was submitted by Spinnaker. It was given to me for free to review, and I get to keep the watch. So also keep that in mind as I go through the review. Let's start by looking at the design of the watch. And I think, obviously the first thing that jumps out of you is the case shape. That eight-sided case shape is very unique. It's not something you see very often. And if the 43 millimeter width on it or diameter on it was something that sort of turned you off instantly, you need to note that with this case shape and with the lug design in particular, it actually wears a lot smaller than that on the wrist. So that's kind of nice there. A lot of times I would look down on the wrist, and because there's no lugs essentially, it often looks like closer to like a 40, 41 millimeter watch, and just to the eye, even though it is 43 millimeters across. That 48 millimeter lug to lug is fairly compact for a watch of this size. Another thing that really stood out to me initially on looking at it was that this is very much, I think, designed for legibility. I think a lot of sort of desk divers or dress divers You get these sunburst dials and metallic hands, and they look really fancy and nice. This one is throwing all that out the window. It's a completely matte dial. There's no metallic surfaces, everything is painted on there in colors that contrast against the dial and make it incredibly legible. It's one of the most legible dive watches I've seen, which again is what you want out of a professional grade dive watch. You don't want something that just looks cool. You want something that you can read easily and quickly, and they've done that great. They've chosen colors that contrast well. They've outlined all of the indices in these dark colors that contrast perfectly against the white dial. You have a handset that is very bright with a bright red minute hand and nice navy second and hour hands that again stand out completely from that flat matte white dial. And by using color to distinguish everything, that gives them a lot of great options to play around with. And so that's one of the fun things about this whole line is there's a lot of different color options there, and they all look really great. I think you can get some really bright, vibrant colors, which is something that, yeah, makes this kind of a fun watch to wear. And this one you get kind of a red, white, and navy blue color scheme, which I think looks really clean, really easy to read. And yeah, I really like the color scheme on this particular one. I really like the white dial. And a lot of times on white dial watches, I think one of the troubles I have is that sometimes the indices are hard to read, but this one they've done a great job in outlining every single hour marker, so there's no legibility issues at all, which is, again, what you want out of a professional style dive watch. And so the legibility continues in with the Loom as well. So a lot of other Spinnaker watches that I've gotten, the Loom has been, not that great, but this one, the Loom, is really, really bright. It's far brighter than any other Spinnaker dive watch that I've reviewed, other than the latest whole chronograph one that I reviewed was maybe similar to this, but this is definitely much brighter than the Flus or the Bradner. It's the kind of Loom that, you don't even necessarily have to charge it up with a flashlight. If you just walk from a light room into a dark room, it'll totally be bright enough to read, even for hours after that, if you just go to bed with it. Great Loom there, so really impressed with that aspect of the watch. Even though the dial is a kind of this flat matte color, it is layered, so you get a couple of different heights on it, so it's very interesting to look at. So yeah, a great way to take something that would normally just be very plain and add a little bit of visual interest to it while still preserving the legibility of the dial, and making that really the theme of this is legibility, I think, first and foremost. And then within those constraints, they've added some really vibrant colors and layers and things to make it look interesting. The bezel is a really nice, solid bezel action, 120 clicks unidirectional. I didn't really feel any backplay at all on it. Really satisfying to use. You're getting a screw down crown, which is signed, and it's signed with like this kind of cool little Spinnaker white medallion that's inlaid and overlaid with, feels like a little bit of acrylic doming on there. So really unique signed crown, something you don't normally see. Some pretty beefy crown guards around it as well, but the crown is still really easy to operate and get a grip on. No problem there setting it or winding the watch. And the finishing on the watch is great. I love the sides where you get all the sharp angles. Everything is very angular. So there's no curved surfaces on the watch. Everything is angles and mostly brushed finishes with some polishing along this beveled edge along the top of the watch. And so it looks really cool. I really love the way that it catches the light. I love the way the polished surfaces contrast against the brushed surfaces. And I love the angles on the side of the case, and yeah, just the flatness of them. I think it just is just a really cool looking case design and really great finishing as well. Yeah, overall, everything about the watch, really cool. The only minor quality control issue I had on this one is that the bezel seems slightly misaligned, but not too bad. Another thing I really appreciate about this one is that lugless design on it. So because of that, because the straps basically just attach directly to the case, they sort of come straight out of the case without there being any gap between the strap and the case. So it makes any strap that you put on there look like it was sort of designed for the watch. It looks like an integrated strap. So I've tried it on some rubber straps, and it looks great. The rubber just comes straight out of the watch, so you can have a really nice form-fitting look with that. Really easy to put those on. It'll work great with leather straps, kind of get the same effect. If you have like a two-piece canvas strap, shouldn't have any problem there. But my favorite is actually other metal bracelets. So like when I like to change out bracelets on watches sometimes, but I don't like the gap between the bracelet and the watch, so I always prefer to try and get curved end links if I can find them. But this one, if you get pretty much any bracelet with straight end links is going to go flush with the side of the watch, and it'll look like it was, made for the watch. So you have a ton of aftermarket bracelet options, which I think is really cool. You can go so many different ways with that, and finding a bracelet that's going to look and fit the watch perfectly, it'll give you a lot of options there. So yeah, so it's really cool the different ways that you can modify this watch by changing out the straps. The lugs are incredibly tight, so I wasn't able to fit a NATO strap under them, or like the Marine Nationale elastic straps. Those didn't necessarily work. But if you get curved spring bars, then it's not so much a problem. I was able to do it with curved spring bars, but with the normal spring bars that came with it, I couldn't get a NATO in there because there just wasn't enough clearance. But still, a lot of great strap options with this lug design. And that's something that you might need because, again, we're going to start talking about the bracelet now. For a lot of people, they might be interested in changing to a different strap. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the bracelet that it's come with. I'm going to talk about the good first and then move on to the bad and the problems that I've had with it. So first, the good about the bracelet, it's really high quality. Like the material that they're using, the steel that they're using on here, really nice surfaces, just a real fun bracelet to hold and to move around. It's incredibly thick. You're getting 4 millimeter thick mesh here, which is way thicker than any other mesh that I've had. And it just drapes around your wrist really well. It bends in a really pleasant way. It just looks cool. It matches the look and the aesthetic of the watch really well. It's just a great material that they've chosen here, and I really like it. Another thing that is really cool about it is the way that the clasp system works. You can basically adjust it to a completely custom fit. There's no pins, there's no links to remove, there's no micro adjustments. You don't need any of that. Because of the way this works, you just flip the little lever on the clasp up and you slide the extra strap, the extra mesh through to exactly the spot where you want it, and it will, you can get an absolutely perfect fit. And the coolest thing about that is you can do it without a tool. So you can use that to adjust the strap on the fly. If you're going to put it on like over a wetsuit, you can really easily make it larger so that it'll fit over the wetsuit, and then adjust it again afterwards to fit back to your wrist normally. Even if you just want to change it during the day, if it gets hot and your wrist swells a little bit, you can easily take it off and adjust it a little bit and fix it there. And you just slide it in and out so you can get the perfect fit. You don't have to worry about any pins or buckles or anything like that. So great option there, great fit there. So yeah, a lot to like about it. You're also getting a really high quality milled clasp, so not a pressed clasp, which is really nice. Scissor clasp in there, really solid feel to it and really satisfying to use. Now that said, there are some problems that I've had with the strap. So let's go and talk about some of the challenges that I've had with it, and starting with the biggest one, and that's the keeper that they have on here. So the way that the strap works is you feed the extra mesh through the clasp and then lock it into place, and that means that you're always going to have this kind of tail hanging on the bottom of your wrist that's very heavy. It's a very solid, heavy metal that's not super flexible, and because of that, gravity is just going to pull it down, and you'll have this tail hanging out the bottom, and it's very easy for that to get caught on things because it's metal. So the keeper is meant to keep that in place, to hug it so it hugs the strap and your wrist and doesn't fall and flap around. Unfortunately, the keeper is also metal, and it's very tall metal. It's very thick. It's about 11 millimeters thick. So it kind of digs into your wrist sometimes at some angles. But the larger problem is that it slides really easily. There's not a lot of friction there. And so what usually happens is after using the watch for a little while, the keeper will kind of work its way down to the clasp itself, and it will no longer be securing the extra mesh at all. The mesh will just start flapping around, and again, getting caught on things. And so, you're constantly having to readjust that, and it's constantly falling down, and it's a little bit frustrating to use. And that's the biggest, I think, kind of design flaw I find with this, is there really needs to be some way to secure that keeper, whether it's a magnet or a latch or something to keep it from, sliding around so loosely to enable you to use that. Other issues I've had with it are much more minor than that, but there are some issues of comfort, and a lot of that will be maybe down to preference. It is a very heavy strap or bracelet, and because of the design, you wind up with 2 layers of this really thick mesh on the bottom of your wrist, along with a really substantial clasp and a really tall keeper. So that winds up putting a lot of metal on the bottom of your wrist, which on the one hand, that's nice because it balances the weight on the top and keeps it from, sliding around too much. So that can be a positive. But if you don't like that much metal under your wrist, it's going to be uncomfortable, particularly if you're going to be using it at a desk and typing and having your hand resting on things. Having that much metal underneath, I found, was somewhat uncomfortable. And then finally, the other issue that I had with it, and again, this is something that, particularly if you're using it for more serious diving, one of the things that you want is a really secure clasp. You want some sort of a locking mechanism that keeps the clasp from opening. This doesn't have any locking mechanism at all. It's just a friction clasp. So it's really easy to open and close. It feels fairly secure. It's satisfying to click it into place. And for the most part, under normal activities, you're not going to have any issues. But there is no security there. And so if you apply enough pressure to the strap at a certain part, it will just pop open. So it can pop open on its own. And in fact, I did have it pop open on its own at least one time. I was playing with my kids and I went to pick one of them up and it kind of rubbed the watch against them and the clasp just popped right open. So keep that in mind as well. Yeah, and that's sort of the good and the bad about the strap. It's kind of unfortunate because I really like the material and the way it looks. And yeah, there's a lot about the strap that I like, but then because of those issues, primarily because of that keeper and the way that it slides around, that's the biggest problem to me, and that's probably the biggest reason why I would be looking to change it out to something different. And it's also unfortunate because, this is the second version of the Dumas, and it's $50 more than the last one, primarily because they've upgraded to this metal mesh bracelet, which again is a super high quality bracelet. But if you can't use it because of the way that the keeper and latch system is designed, you're paying that extra $50 for something that you won't necessarily use. So I would have preferred it if they would have included a rubber strap, or at least given you the option to have it on the rubber strap instead of the mesh strap if you didn't want to deal with that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, if that's the kind of stuff that would annoy you or keep you from purchasing the watch. Also check out some other reviews. There's a lot of reviews of this watch out right now, and most of the other reviews I've been watching to see, most people don't seem to mind any of the issues that I brought up or haven't noticed them. I've had the watch, for about a week and a half. I've worn it a lot, and so I feel like I have a pretty good feel for it, but I've seen at least one other reviewer complained about the same issues, but most of the guys didn't seem to mind too much. So, take it or leave it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. I always love to read your comments, and yeah, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to ask me. And yeah, good talking to you, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.